Gentlemen, the time's come once again to discuss things.
Hello, boilers and ghouls. It's your old pal Scythe Part 2 here, joined today by the real maggot.
Hello, I'm the real maggot.
And Corpse Nielsen. I couldn't think of a good one. I was kind of on the spot there. I should have prepared a little bit better.
Oh, how about Rodder Nelson?
Rodder Nelson? I don't know. Carrion Nelson?
Okay, you
Carrion?
can say you don't like
it. Yeah. See, Connor, you're banned from Horror Month. Your name sucks to do puns with.
Yeah. it really does. Unless like Manor Keelson or something.
Yeah. Anyway.
By the way, don't be surprised if during the conversation I will stop it cold with an idea.
Okay.
Like, oh, I know!
Okay, I'm so excited for that. Anyway, so Manos picked a fan film for us to review, and I watched through this, I was like, this doesn't fucking count as a horror fan film. And then it takes a turn at some point, I'm like, I'll give it a pass. This gets a solid C-, as far as horror fan films go. But, you know, it was an interesting thing, and it's based off of one of Connor's favorite shows, I guess, properties, Twin Peaks.
Well, franchises in general.
Twin Peaks. So we decided to invite Connor on. And I don't know, the way Horror Month is going, given what I'm going to pick at the end of this, maybe this Geeky Gentleman Horror Month fan film reviews will all just be with special guests.
That sounds fun. Yeah. I could go for that.
All right.
And I picked it because I'm also a huge Twin Peaks fan. It's one of my favorite shows. It's been a slight influence on me in my writing, and I absolutely love it. And since I started doing fan film reviews with you, I periodically look for one. And I found a couple, but they were like, one was 10 minutes and really didn't do anything, really. It just had some basic imagery and didn't matter much. But this felt like a deep dive into the characters. So it was like, oh, okay, let's do this one.
Okay. And so you guys both really, really like Twin Peaks, and I have never seen it, and also not really into David Lynch, as Connor's previous episodes on the show have alluded to. I'm not a fan.
I've learned to look past that.
That's okay. You don't have to look past it. You can look it dead in the face, and I will still not be a fan, even if it costs us our friendship. Guarantee, easily will throw away your friendship in order to not be a fan of David Lynch. I'm sorry. I just don't get it. Like I wonder if David Lynch has just like huge imposter syndrome sometimes. There's like, maybe if I just make some random shit, people like think it's really artsy and intelligent, and they'll think I'm like a good director. And then like it worked, and then he's just like, oh shit, I guess I have to just keep going. I kind of wonder.
No, I don't think that's the way.
No, if you've seen an interview with the guy, that is not what's happening at all. He's such a nut, and I love him. I love him so much.
I think that's a kind of a lazy interpretation of his work, actually. I hear that from time to time.
But still.
I know.
So yeah, I don't know. I was not looking forward to this, and it's...
I know.
It's one of those things where it's so hard to be anywhere near objective or to try to be fair to something when it's based off something you don't like and it's intentionally trying to at least emulate or be like that thing you don't like. So this is one of those cases where I'm like, yeah, this is actually a really interesting, really, kind of ambitious, kind of impressive fan film. And I hate it. On a personal level, I just hated it. But that's fine because I hated it because it's trying to be like the thing that I just hate. And so that's where I am. What'd you two think?
I liked it. I thought it was a real strong attempt to emulate the character specifically of Laura Palmer. It struck me as a big acting experiment. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was pretty well shot. I will say that I watched it with my wife, who's also a big Twin Peaks fan, and she found it rather dull. And I think that's because they made a conscious choice to approach one aspect of Twin Peaks, and that's the teenage melodrama stuff from Twin Peaks, and didn't really dig too deep. And the spooky stuff, the comedy stuff, the horror stuff, which is kind of important stuff that really, kind of spices everything up. But I could tell just from watching that's a conscious choice. So, I mean, I liked it overall.
Okay. Connor, how about you?
So, I don't think I've ever seen a fan film before.
Really?
And so...
Welcome to the internet.
Yeah. So I feel a little out of my depth talking here, but if there's one thing I love, it's Twin Peaks. I've seen the show. I've lost track of how many times I've seen the show now. When The Return was on, I started watching it, and about halfway through it, I watched through everything up until that point again. And then at some point before it was over, I started it again and watched it all the way until that point. And then before the final episode, I started it over and watched all 18 parts at that point. So I've seen the revival show like maybe 5 times, 6 times, like as many times as I've seen the original series and Fire Walk with Me. And what's great about Twin Peaks is that the original series, the film Fire Walk with Me, and the revival, they're very different from one another, but they all feel coherent with one another. And this fan film is kind of blending together Fire Walk with Me and the original series. And I don't know how much I actually liked it. And that's kind of one of the things where you're right, Manos. It is really leaning hard into the teen melodrama. But what this really kind of struck me as was, you're right, it's an acting experiment. It's very ambitious, and I give it points for that. And I did think, as an acting experiment, I admired it greatly. But just as a fan of Twin Peaks, I don't know what someone's supposed to get out of it, because really what it is it's just Fire Walk with Me, but not from Laura's perspective. And I don't know when this takes place. And it's just recreating scenes from Twin Peaks. And then when it doesn't, I feel like I don't understand its characterization or its approach to this world. So that's I don't know. I feel awkward talking about it because I'm not a fan film guy, and I didn't really enjoy it, but I'm more than willing to talk about it.
Okay.
You know what it reminded me of? Because I wasn't sure if this would attempt to tell like its own story within like any kind of like open space for Laura. And it reminded me, this, I don't know if this sounds weird or not, but it reminds me of, those free comic day specials that Marvel or DC will put out that's kind of like a clip show catching you up on like the big notes of something that's going on to get you ready for an event or something like that. This kind of reminded me of that, actually, with the framing device of the interviews, which I thought were nicely done.
You see, so yeah, show, that came into my head while I was watching it.
Clip shows.
Yeah. So yeah, it wasn't. Yeah. So it wasn't really originally like it wasn't attempting to like do its own like original story. It was kind of like I guess the big bullet points of the series in Fire Walk with Me. I think that's a good point. You brought up about the Fire Walk me. And it's mainly a chance to kind of like, I feel like from the creators, because the creators feel like they really are fans of the show. And also like a chance to really kind of go ape shit with the acting, like with one actor doing 14 roles.
Which, okay, so like, that's the thing I feel I need more context on, because
Yeah.
I don't understand why. Like, it's just such a weird choice to do, and it's not that it like the actor is bad in the role. It's just that like, but why play 14 roles? It's not like anything. I don't feel like it serves anything in the piece. Is the weird part. Like it doesn't feel necessary. It feels very arbitrary. And like what made it even weirder is like it would feel less arbitrary if not for the fact that there were other actors. Like if it was like there are only 14 characters in this, there are no extras, it's all played by the same person, that would at least make it feel like a more natural choice. But just the second other actors besides this one actor playing 14 parts show up, I'm like, well, then why the fuck didn't you just get more actors for the more characters? It's just such an arbitrary choice to me.
No, I think that serves actually to kind of like, sort of like, you know, create, you know, a stronger illusion for you know, all the roles, you know, because they do a lot, pretty convincing split screen stuff here and there, and you know, also mixing it up. There's a couple of times where they have like extra actors in there. It's like, oh shit, which ones are her again? I think there's two. All right. The client at the brothel, by the way, with the mustache was one of my favorites because that makeup look was, I don't know, rather amusing.
So,
but I don't know. I don't think
so.
Oh yeah, Connor, go.
Well, my interpretation on it is that, like, the whole concept of Twin Peaks is that Laura Palmer, as, like, a presence, just kind of, like, possesses that show. Like, every single subplot of that show is a different genre. It's teen melodrama, and it's a soap opera that's also a parody of soap operas, and it's kind of comedic, and there's a cop show, and you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, it's a like, horror show, and
it's like flipping through channels, you know. But what makes it all, like, the linchpin of it all is Laura Palmer. And so I think having like all these people played by the same actor is sort of like trying to say that like she's in them all. You know what I mean?
Oh, and that's an interesting interpretation.
That's what I was getting from it. So the thing is, acting in David Lynch things are very specific, for lack of a better term. I know a lot of people don't like acting in David Lynch movies. One of them is in this phone call right now. But I don't know. So when it comes to, like, say, I think this actor, the best performance that they give is as Donna, because I think that this actor is really restrained and is able to kind of do that restraint very well. And that's Donna as a character. That's her thing. She's innocent. She's very quiet and meek. But then you get people like James Hurley, who is also kind of like, you know, boy who cries. That's his kind of thing. He's very soft-spoken as well, until he screams, and it's the funniest thing in the entire show. But then you get people like Bobby Briggs, where Dana Ashbrook, his performance in the original series is very interesting to watch grow, because when I first started watching the show, I'm like, I don't know about this guy. But then by the end of that show, Bobby's one of my favorite characters in that. And I know Rasco watched that show recently, like a year or so ago, and Bobby is Rasco's favorite character. And it's like, he grows and he becomes... But Dana Ashbrook's performance is very over the top, and if mishandled, could be very embarrassing.
Yeah.
But this actor doesn't go over the top with that, and I think that in the Bobby costume looks kind of like Matthew McConaughey. So so you know, it's a very interesting experiment and ambition. But I think with some of the performances, I don't I don't under. I think some of them come off better than others.
I would agree. And actually, when you do 14 roles, yeah, not everyone is going to be like to the equal. And actually, while I was watching this, I was like thinking, I was actually in my mind picking apart like, okay, which ones do I like and which ones are like weaker? And like Bobby, I think is probably maybe one of the weaker ones, easy. Where let's see, I did like the Laura performance. I did like the Audrey and the Donna. The Donna point is really good and subtle. Let's see.
Audrey was really good. I will say that.
Yeah. They also played the old woman whose name I can't remember.
Is she even in the show? Because I don't remember her from the show.
I can't remember. Oh, damn. I have to go back and check the names. But that makeup job was really good. Yeah, the makeup, by the way, slightly off topic, was really, I think, very well done in this.
I thought it varied. Like you mentioned the old woman, and I thought that was probably one of the points at which they were overstretching their ability because like the wrinkles were like way too overdone. But some of the other makeup, like a lot of the hair stuff, particularly with eyebrows, something about dyeing eyebrows always looks weird. But I thought they did a decent job handling it here.
Yeah.
One of the things I was more impressed by about this was the lighting to change the look of the character. There's like that shot in the credits where they go through all the different roles, and it's like, you know, the structure of the face doesn't change much. It's not like they pour pounds of makeup and prosthetics on the actor to try to change each character. But a lot of it just had to do with the fact that they kept like changing the lighting of how they lit certain characters, and that really helped to kind of put it over the top, particularly for some of the escort girls. I thought that was like one of the points at which it was the most apparent that like they didn't really do much different as far as the face and makeup went. They just lit her differently, and I thought that was a kind of a cool little technique to use, I suppose.
And you know what? A lot of people, particularly like more low budget productions, like fan films and low budget films, tend to forget about the relationship between makeup and lighting. Like they'll be on top of one and not the other.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a really fair point. Yeah. So
and
go ahead.
This took place. I guess this took them 2 years to make.
Wow.
So. I was reading the description, and so this came out in October of 2018, I think. So they probably started this in 2016, which is before season 3 came out. So, yeah, I think that on a technical level, this is very impressive, and they should be very proud of their work. The one thing that I have reservations about is that, so they do a really good job of replicating a 1990s show and movie, and then it just kind of stops and becomes a music video for a couple minutes.
Yeah.
And that felt very modern. In the way it's lit, in the way it's shot, in the way it felt like a very contemporary music video, and that really took me out. And that's an original song that they had I guess written for this fan film, and that also felt very, very modern, and like so much, like it felt very deliberate and modern. And that's like one thing where I really admire the ambition here, but I do question a lot of the choices. And so, and it's not even necessarily I think they're bad. I just, while I'm watching it, I'm questioning is all.
I think that was one of the examples. I remember that popped out at me too. That didn't really have like much of a Lynch feel to it, and.
That was my favorite part of the whole fan film.
But
I'm sorry, I just find that very amusing.
And by the way, I don't know. I didn't have so much a problem with it, but it was one of those things I openly realized, like, okay, that's them contributing some visual aspect to this. And there were a couple of touches here and there. It's like, okay, a lot of this is. Is scenes from the shows or retellings of scenes we've been told about, and so on and so forth. So yeah, there was small bits of originality, original scenes, original material done. Or some of this is, I guess, interpreting, some scenes we've only heard about.
But a lot of dialogue is recycled dialogue.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, like, I could see, like, all the work going into this. That definitely probably eased up a lot of, like, heavy lifting with the scripting and stuff like that. Like, it is a fan film, so, of course that would be unforgivable if this was, like, a legit, like, reboot or something like that. or a remake. But yeah, that I had this feeling where it's like, I don't know if it took me out, but it was one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, I feel like you probably should, like, have some sort of your own stamp on this material.
Yeah. Well, and I guess one thing I should probably just come out and say, and so I love Fire Walk with Me. It's my favorite aspect of the Twin Peaks experience. But there's a part of me that doesn't like talking about Fire Walk with Me because it comes across like I haven't seen a whole lot of movies.
Because really, why do you feel that?
Because it's my favorite Lynch film. It's my favorite horror film. It's my favorite leading performance. It's my favorite villainous performance. It's my favorite opening shot in the film. It's my favorite musical score for a movie. Like, it has a lot of my favorite things are in that movie, and so it comes across like I haven't seen a whole lot of movies, and I just saw it last week. But
like, my favorite film of all time is Transformers the movie.
Yeah, like, dude, you'll never believe what I just saw. But it's what's great about Fire Walk with Me is that it is a horror movie, but it's not a very conventional horror movie. And that movie, and when it came out, it was one of the worst reviewed films ever. And I don't know how that is the case. I guess I don't know, but I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing, and Lynch, like, holds you in the palm of his hand, and, like, it plays you like a violin. It is, like, such a magnificent film, and it's so like awkwardly structured on paper, and it shouldn't work, but it really, really does. And a lot of that just comes down to David Lynch he loves this character, and he knows exactly what he's going to do, and he knows exactly what his leading actress is capable of. And Cheryl Lee gives an insane performance in that movie. She goes all over the place. And what's crazy about that movie is that it's the last 7 days of her life. And you're seeing it from her perspective. So there's a level of, and there's such an empathy for that character. And it never feels repetitive, and it's never boring. And it's the first half of the Laura Palmer section of the movie, which is like the last 2/3. It's horrifying. It's like legitimately terrifying stuff. And then the rest of the movie is just going to be like this, and it stops being scary and it becomes unspeakably sad. It is so sad by the time you get to the end of that movie. And I think what gives that movie its soul is that it is from Laura's perspective. And a lot of this movie also, it has the best lines in Twin Peaks, like "Nighttime is my time." If I had a nickel for every cigarette your mother smoked, I'd be dead. It had, and then it has, like, your Laura disappeared. It's just me now, and it has, like, all those great stuff, and a lot of that comes down to delivery and that it's Cheryl Lee. And with this, though, it's like kind of like the greatest hits, and it's like a different person's. It's like a cover of a song you love. Yeah. And so there's that part of me that's like, I love this thing so much. Seeing someone else's take on it is like, there's that part of me that's just like, well, it's not the thing I love, and like, there's that whole monologue she gives about, like, if you're falling in space, you'll just go faster and faster, and you'll burst into flames, and the angels won't stop you because they've all gone away. The way Cheryl Lee delivers that line in the movie is just completely stone-faced, and it's chilling. And in this, she starts crying, and I feel it kind of robs that of its kind of grim power. And I feel like this short film, though, it's a less successful version of Fire Walk with Me, because I do feel like it is repetitive. It does get a little boring for me. It goes on for a little too long, and it's like the repetition really started to get to me. Like, every scene somebody's crying,
And so that's sort of what ultimately got to me.
I feel like it was probably maybe 15 minutes too long. Like maybe I could have done a 45 minute run on this, maybe half hour at most. I don't know. I think maybe. Let's see. It's funny. This actually got me. The last I watched of Twin Peaks was actually just a few weeks ago. I was watching Fire Walk with Me, and I was watched it with Lindsay because I had exposed Lindsay to the show on Netflix just before season 3 popped on, and she got really into that, and then we watched season 3. I don't have Showtime, so I ended up just dealing with it, and then the DVD box set came out, and I bought it. I instantly bought it the second I saw it. I was low on money anyway, and I was like, "Fuck it, I need this." So we watched that every day, and then about a couple of months later, I had the chance to sit down. We watched Fire Walk with Me, and she absolutely loved it. And that affects when it came in theaters. I just went there first night to see it. I brought a friend who had never seen the show. His name was Aaron. I was like, I don't know if he's gonna dig this or something. And he was he wouldn't shut up about it after we were done.
Oh, that's great. I always wonder how that movie plays to somebody who isn't familiar.
Yeah, and he's kind of a meat and potatoes kind of horror guy, and metalhead and stuff like that. And we were friends. And was like, I hope he likes it. And he kept talking about the scenes with Bob all the time, and just really dug it. And they both, both people I exposed to the movie had different experiences. Lindsay watched the whole show up until then, and the other one was just introduced with it. And actually became communicated with him about Twin Peaks a couple times recently on Facebook, and he apparently at some point watched the whole show afterwards. So yeah, this is
Fire
kind of
Walk with Me abridged.
I don't want to say the traveling theater version of Fire Walk with Me.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool. The local theater's doing Fire Walk with Me. Let's go see it.
So you mentioned Bob, and what's very interesting about this short is that it doesn't even broach the esoteric stuff of the show. So the whole Black Lodge mythology and Killer Bob and the one-armed man Mike and all the stuff from the inhabiting spirits and all that stuff that kind of is what's sort of going on behind the curtain in this small town, a literal curtain. It isn't talked about. And so I'm just curious, Ian, you have never watched the show and you have no interest. Since you don't care, Leland Palmer is Laura's dad, and he's possessed by a demon named Killer Bob to go around and kill people. And it's more of an esoteric concept, and it's really cool. And in the show, they kind of let him off the hook because he was possessed by the devil, basically. And then in the movie, it goes back and says, no, there's more to it than that, and there's more darkness in him, and it's more about an expression of his darkness and mankind's darkness, and that's not here. And what's also interesting is that when they're talking to the teenagers in their testimonies, they talk about the relationship and how everyone knows that Leland's the one who did it. And I'm just wondering, when does this take place? You know what I mean? And also, the way they represent the Palmer household is that Sarah, which is Laura's mom, knew, and she didn't. And I don't know, that was a very interesting choice. And but I also wonder why.
I have a feeling it took place in between Leland getting caught and the end of the series, the Black Lodge story in the last episode. I imagine it takes place roughly in that era. While I was disappointed that we didn't see the more spooky stuff, the Bob stuff, the Black Lodge stuff, the interpretation they do here is mostly seen through her teenage friends, and many of them didn't really have too much experience with that.
That's fair.
And when they did, it was very uncertain of what they were very uncertain of what they were seeing. So I guess, I don't know, when you choose to do it in this angle, they probably really couldn't, they could have done whatever the fuck they wanted to, but I guess thematically it would have been a little bit more difficult to kind of put that layer in when you're choosing to have this view into the series.
That's true. That's understandable.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that means we don't get to see Spooky Bob stuff, but
I got that right.
I don't know. Like I said,
it's really a shame that we don't get to hear James
references.
sing a song.
That's true. Well, James is cool.
He's always been cool.
Yeah.
I think it's a good choice that they had him wear a bandana so that
That's
you
okay.
didn't see his giant forehead. So
Yeah, maybe we should do a Twin Peaks video. I could talk about this shit for a
I
while.
could talk about the show for days.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get into talk about the fan film itself just a little bit more, because you guys have been
Sure.
mostly going on its relation to the series. So this was one of those weird things where it was just because I've got no exposure to the show, it was kind of uncomfortable to watch some of this stuff. Man, this is some heavy shit, Manos. He's had me every day since I was 12. I was like, oh, I didn't need that one.
Yeah.
Funny enough, also coming out this week
Yeah.
is a review of It Chapter 1, so I guess this is the parental sexual abuse week of Geeky Gentleman Horror Month. So have fun with that.
Bob considers
Yeah, I
Pennywise
guess.
an amateur.
It's just one of those things where I'm like, man, it's got some heavy fucking material, which is one of the things where it was I was watching this at first, I'm like, oh man, I just didn't realize it was horror month, so he just picked something. But then it takes a turn, and I'm like, okay, no, yeah, fair enough. Okay, heavy stuff. Does fan film justify dealing with heavy material like this? It's one of those things where when you read a fan fiction and they just it's clearly just trying to do a shock value thing, and so it doesn't really think of the implications of what it's putting the characters through, and the fact that if an editor got a hold of this, they'd never let the writer get away with that. And so kind of I have a similar mindset to when I'm watching some fan films and they go certain places, and so I was gonna ask if that was canon to the show or not, because I thought that was a big fucking step to make.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
it's weird because all the stuff where they talk about that are scenes directly lifted
Interesting.
from
Okay.
the show.
Yeah, it would be disingenuous to do a whole hour's worth of Laura Palmer fan film and not touch on it, not deal with
No,
it.
I mean that's totally fair. It was weird watching this because I definitely got the sense that this is all stuff that's that the series revolved around, but I wasn't sure if the series ever actually touched. I was really curious if someone was okay, I've pieced together all this information that they've seeded throughout the entirety of Twin Peaks, but we've never actually gotten to see Laura Palmer's story. So here's me putting it on screen for the first time. And I get the impression from what you guys have said that no, this scene's her story's already perfectly fleshed out.
Yeah, well, it's funny because
Yes.
the dancing around it is the show, seeing it is the movie.
Gotcha.
Because the show, of course, was 1990, 1991 ABC. And I feel like what they got away with back then was, pretty groundbreaking, and stretched a lot of what you could do on a TV show at the time.
Especially with the reveal of what's going on.
Oh my God, yeah, they'd be really subtle about all that stuff.
All
And then
right,
they submitted that one episode like hours before the deadline, so the censors couldn't get the scene the reveal of how you find out who's doing the killings is you see another murder and you just see it happen, and it's shocking. And it's shocking by today's standards, I think, anyways.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get you to talk just about the fan film. I'm sorry.
It's very
Well,
difficult
no.
to. It's very difficult because so much of this is just the show or the movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just their interpretation of the same material. It would be very much like doing an hour's worth of Batman fan film and not talk about the death of his parents.
Gotcha. No, I mean, I think that's
it's
fair.
an
It's
aspect
just
of the character.
no, I get what you're saying. I'm just trying to like focus in on things particular to the fan film itself and see if there's stuff that I don't know. I feel bad sometimes when we do these fan film reviews and we barely talk about the fan film.
Oh no, actually, one of the things I like so much about this fan film is it has me really in the mood to watch some Twin Peaks.
Yes, I did.
Like it works on that fan level. Like if you've never seen the franchise, I always think a good fan film is one that gets a newbie to want to see the property that they're doing a fan film, or if you're a fan already, makes you want to go back and like dig into whatever it is. And we've had that. I've had that experience when we've reviewed things that I have no interest in, and like that Game of Thrones fan film made me not want to see one episode ever, ever, because I was so bored by it. And other things of like, man, I really probably should check I don't know, Metroid out or whatever the fuck. And yeah, I think like, I feel like going and watching, I don't know, man, like, some episodes of the original series. I feel like watching God of Light right now, which is one of my favorite episodes of season 3. So I don't know, it works on that level.
I guess that's good to hear. That's probably the best thing you could say about it. Let me ask you this. Would you recommend this to people that are fans of Twin Peaks? Would you say, oh, you're a Twin Peaks fan, you should check out this awesome fan film?
Well, I mean, I've looked at the comments of this, and it looks like Twin Peaks fans do like it, so I would maybe recommend, like, hey, I'm not the biggest fan of it myself, but others do seem to really dig it, so yeah, check it out, see where you land on that. So that's probably where I'd fall on that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page. I would give it a light recommendation to Twin Peaks fans. I go this, nice interpretation, and yeah, I mean, it hits kind of like the fan favorite bits of it, and it's very obvious through, even though it has some issues. It's very obvious, like the people who put this together really, really loved it. So I can't see anything wrong with that.
And it looks like only 2 people put this together, and they did a remarkable job, like on the production level. So it's like one of those things where the production is so good, I'm like, that's not the way it looks in the show, and then I have to stop. Wait, because it's not the show, and like I have to remind myself that it's such a professional-looking production that it had, like, especially when they're at the horns and like she goes to see Audrey, like in all the wood paneling, that looked like a set from the show. And the way they light it, and it's all very well produced, and that was my personal favorite aspect of it.
And there was a great shot in that scene of you have the one close up and the other close up of her as Audrey, then back to Laura, and then we pull back and we have that nice split screen shot in that room, in that set, where it's easy to forget it's the same person.
I agree.
Okay, well, I guess unless there's anything else about this that you guys really wanted to get into, I don't want to be like overly negative on it. I kind of said my piece at the beginning. It's like, I don't like David Lynch stuff. This is trying to be kind of like David Lynch, and so therefore I don't like it. That doesn't mean it's bad necessarily. I'm not going to really try to get into the fight of David Lynch is not a good director or something like that right now. I don't have the energy for that kind of battle.
Yeah.
But I just...
you know who would disagree with you on that?
Who?
Stanley Kubrick.
I'm
I thought he
sure.
was a pretty good director.
Stanley Kubrick can be wrong. That's part of his genius, is he can be wrong. I mean, he made a shitty movie too. It's called Eyes Wide Shut. Anyway, so I don't know. It's one of those things where like this is a weird experience just to talk about and to watch. This is one of those things where like it's kind of it's the thing about Geeky Gentleman that I like. It's a double-edged sword though. Like I get exposed to things that I know I never would have watched in a million years, and sometimes that leads to me getting into a franchise that I've never really heard of before. And sometimes it means I have to sit through an hour of something that I just thoroughly do not enjoy. This happened to be the other side, but it's not something that the creators behind this fan film should feel bad about. It's just, this is definitely not my cup of tea.
I just have a question then. What about it is not your cup of tea?
It's just the atmosphere. It's just everything about the way that things go. I mean, you did the Eraserhead movie review with me. This type of filmmaking is just so not my thing.
Okay, because like with Twin Peaks, it's a lot less abstract than Eraserhead. I'm just curious if it's too corny for you, or if it's like taking itself too seriously in some aspects, or like if it's like the weird,
it's
like
the aesthetic.
it's a melodrama.
It's the aesthetic.
Okay,
it's just the entire zeitgeist of the thing. Just every.
It's like
Lynchian is a verb, and I hate it.
Because I generally consider like Twin Peaks and probably Blue Velvet are the most mainstream things.
Yeah, and
he's ever made.
Blue Velvet made me laugh my ass off for like a good half hour, and I don't think it was intending to. Anyway. Don't you fucking look at me. That shit just always gets me. Anyway, so let's go ahead and go on to ratings. I'll go first, and again, if the people watching this or the people that made this or watching this, don't take my word for anything. I just don't fucking like this type of thing. I'll give this a solid 0 out of 5 mountain peaks. And that's based entirely on the fact that I personally did not enjoy it, so I really, really, really just can't get into much of it. It's trying to do everything and is succeeding at everything it's trying to do. But I still don't.
Okay, I guess I'll go. So I think that, I think it's ultimately unsuccessful in terms of what the purpose is, because the purpose does kind of confuse me, but it is very ambitious, and I do think the acting's really good, especially 14 roles, and the production's excellent. I'll give it 2.5 identical actors out of 5.
I guess I liked it the most, although there are quite a few issues with it. It does run a bit, 15 to 20 minutes too long. It would have been nice if they approached it with the intent of doing an original story within the universe instead of the greatest hits. But other than that, I was pretty impressed by the ambitiousness of the filmmaking and the acting. So based on that, I'd probably give it 3.5 bodies wrapped in plastic.
Okay, all right. I kind of hinted at this at the beginning of the episode, but Deadpoolzilla wanted to review a Friday the 13th fan film. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but that's what we'll be talking about next week. So, everyone, thanks very much for watching. Until next time, I'm Scythe Part 2.
I'm the... What was I called?
The Real Maggot.
The Real Maggot.
Yeah.
I'm the Real Maggot.
And I'm Horror Nerd Needles in.
Oh, there we go.
I like it. Yeah, there we go.
Made it work.
Discussing